morning, everyone. Welcome to 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations here on Business Morning, only on Channels Television. I'm John McQuan. We start, as usual, from what's going on in the oil space. Prices fell today as an industry report shows higher crude inventories in the United States, which is the world's biggest crude consumer. That has reinforced concerns over oversupply, though price declines were limited by sanctions on Russian oil flows. So we see for this morning, the color is red. For Brent is down 0.42%, $64.62 a barrel. For WTI is also about that range, 0.40% down at $60.50 for a barrel. In both cases, the worries about Russian supply are being weighed against forecasts from analysts that oil output in excess of current demand that has pressured prices, and that also follows that Ukrainian attack on Russian energy and port infrastructure. Profit margins for producing diesel fuel have surged in Europe, reaching the highest in September 2023. This seems to be a recurring event at this time as there's increase in refinery margins globally. Meanwhile, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries has denied reports that it forecasts surplus in global crude supply next year. Well, a statement from the oil-producing countries' cartel clarified that the reference attributing the projection to its November monthly oil market report was not included in their official report. At the same time, OPEC Secretary General Haitham Al-Ghais says that while the monthly oil market report discusses trade surplus in its economic session, it does not address surpluses in terms of market balances. And the World Bank has introduced Funds Chain. It's a new blockchain-powered platform that's designed to enhance transparency and accountability in project financing across Nigeria. This was unveiled on Tuesday. Funds Chain leverages distributed ledger technology to provide real-time tracking of funds from disbursement to execution. And the platform aims to curb leakages, strengthen oversight, and build public trust in development programs, particularly in sectors like infrastructure, education, and health. According to the World Bank, the system will allow government agencies, development partners, and citizens alike to monitor project expenditure and progress, ensuring that resources reach their intended beneficiaries. A Funds Chain is part of the bank's broader push to promote digital solutions that improve governance and service delivery in developing economies. Let's see how the market closed yesterday. That's talking about Nigeria's domestic market. We see it retains that red color, is still on the downward trend, profit-taking, dominating sentiment in the market. The oil and is now at 144,986.51. Equities cap as a market cap yesterday lost 110.2 billion naira. Activity was all red from volume to value and to deals. They dropped compared to the previous trading. Tantalizers, that's a story of its export, especially in the fishery and shrimp, seafood industry. That's also keeping Tantalizers top on the mind of a lot of investors. So we see it still on the top trades. I believe that's the second consecutive day that it's on the top trades. Sterling, NG, and Universal Insurance also made it to the top trades list. Top gainers first yesterday. NCL, UPL, and Tantalizers there as expected and explained earlier. Top losers, however, Living Trust, MC Nichols, and Livestock. Those were the top losers for yesterday. Great news came the way of Nigeria yesterday, with a lot of applause coming from its development institutions around the world. And the news is that Nigeria's foreign reserve climbed to $46.7 billion. That's the highest level since 2018. This, of course, was released by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The CBN governor, Mr. Laimi Kaduso, said this at an event, attributing the feat to the recent Eurobond issuance, renewed investor confidence, improved oil receipts, and stronger balance of payments inflows described it as a major milestone in the CBN's current reform program. Mr. Kajuso explains that the latest reserve position, which was recorded November 14, could cover more than 10 months of imports. Climate conversation is still on over there in Brazil. Our correspondent, Ayola Kasim, is still right there, busy. Yesterday was Nigeria Day at COP30, and she put up this report to tell us what happened.
Nigerians and delegates from other countries, despite the high temperatures in the pavilion area, trooped to the Nigerian stand on the second Tuesday of COP30 to mark the Nigeria Day. First, the Minister of Regional Development launched a 5-year integrated climate action plan for driving investment for the development of the country's regions, in line with the Paris Agreement.
Well, in 5 years' time, we expect that the ministry will be able to draw from carbon financing. We'll also be able to get green funding in order to address some of these challenges in all the regions.
During Nigeria Day, delegates hold discussions on climate actions, national initiatives, and high-level dialogues, government officials, diversity laws, and land degradation.
One or two parties are thinking that it's at the early stage for there to be a draft text. So there have not even been a draft text yet, because I mean, still it's still at the technical level. So there's no draft text yet. So we are trying to push to see that at least let's leave COP30 with a draft text.
Meanwhile, the COP30 presidency has released a first draft called Material Decision. It summarizes the consideration of countries' national plans and the obligation of developed countries to provide climate finance and unilateral trade measures. But experts say the roadmap to transition away from fossil fuel it presents falls too short for what is needed to avert global climate crisis. From the Hunger Convention and First Center of the Amazon in Belém, Brazil, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
Ayola still staying busy there. Now, one of the stories that we had yesterday is that Nigeria's trade with African countries increased by 610 billion naira in the first half of 2025, hitting a total of 4.82 trillion naira. This growth was driven primarily by significant rise in exports, especially during the second quarter, and attributed to government efforts like streamlining customs, improving transport lanes, and implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA. And of course, we've been hearing a whole lot about the AfCFTA. And if we were to look at the details of the trade in this increase, we see total trade value for this first half of 2025 at 4.82 trillion, and that's up from 4.27 trillion in the same period of 2024. We saw export growth. It rose from 4.21 trillion to 4.82 trillion for the half year on year, with second quarter of 2025 showing a large jump to 2.97 trillion from 1.98 trillion in the second quarter. We also saw import growth. Imports we saw increase to 1.82 trillion from 1.13 trillion in the year, that's year on year. Trade balance, we see Nigeria remained a net exporter to Africa during this period. And we see right there the numbers and factors contributing to this, a lot of intentionality, and of course dealing with the customs and the issue around that also topped the list. Now let's have this conversation with the president of Nigeria Trade and Investment Center Canada Incorporated, Chief Femi Boede, joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, morning viewers.
Yeah, so we see this as good news, as a benefit of AfCFTA and some intentionality by the government. But I mean, if we look at it further, we'll see that it's still low compared to what South Africa does, for instance, and even trade within the continent is still low compared to other regions.
Definitely, you're right on that. The AfCFTA is actually Africa's biggest economic opportunity in a generation, in a long, long time. It's a single market of 1.3 billion people, and about $3.4 trillion in combined GDP to boost intra-Africa trade. Therefore, Nigeria needs to do. Yeah, Nigeria is moving slowly. We should already acknowledge that. But then Nigeria needs to be more aggressive, more up and doing, and probably take the bull more by the horns in a stronger way than we did with the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. Specialized markets like AFCFTA, like the AGOA that I think for now is rested, are there. They are policies, they exist, they are documents, they are guidelines. They are good to exist, but it is better for the country to be prepared and to prepare its commercial soldiers to take advantage of these opportunities. Certainly there is a window, a very large window of growth, not only for Nigeria, but for other countries in Africa to trade among themselves. 15 to 18% trade is much, much too low compared to 60 to 70% of trade within the European economic bloc.
So interesting, and it would be good to dive into some of those areas which we think has led to this increase. We talked about government initiatives. The Nigerian government has been working to improve customs, especially, and transport links. But we know that infrastructure is still a challenge. The AFCFTA implementation, which you also mentioned, streamline export processes and improved export quality. Let's talk about the intervention of the government, especially when we want to talk about customs, for instance, as one of the agencies that would be responsible or is responsible for facilitating this intra-African trade. How much changes have you seen? How much more would you like to see?
First, again, let me acknowledge that which is obvious and that which is happening. Even now, I think it must be today that Nigeria, as chair of the World Customs Organization, is rounding up its packed program, 3 days customs services in all African countries have converged on Abuja. Nigeria Customs Service has been hosting. Since the beginning of his administration, I think Bashir Adeni, the Controller General of Customs, made it clear that he wanted to come and facilitate trade, to change the narrative of Nigeria Customs Service from being a revenue generating center only to actually boosting trade, and he has been living up to that. Let's also give it up to the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. Since Jumoke Oduwole came on board, we have seen Nigeria taking the lead, championing the cause of boosting intra-trade in Africa. Now we are able to talk about 15%. About 3-4 years ago, intra-trade in Africa was actually less than 4% among ourselves. And the reason is quite simple. Africa is exporting raw materials to Europe, America, and Asia, rather than exporting finished goods. Africa, if you look at it as a single economic bloc, already has that challenge that almost everything we consume is produced in each country. So you talk about cassava. Nigeria produces cassava, Ghana produces cassava, Benin Republic produces cassava, and in the east coast of Africa, probably Zaire, Congo Democratic Republic, is probably the largest producer of cassava in the world. So how do we trade cassava among ourselves? Africa must learn to move from from the current practice of exporting basic agricultural raw materials to adding value to exports. Perhaps when we develop the habit of exporting at least intermediate semi-processed products among ourselves, take for example Nigeria's cassava as it is, maybe it's produced, processed to industrial starch and exported, for example, to Ghana, who then turns it into something for the manufacturing industry. Or we look at our cocoa. We are not net consumers of chocolate. So we continue to remain exporters of cocoa beans. Can we change that to exporting cocoa butter, cocoa liquor, cocoa powder to the countries that actually produce this chocolate and bring it back, sell to us in Africa at 10 times the price at which they buy? So my proposition for exploring the window that is definitely open right now is for Africa to move from exporting basic, their agricultural commodities in the basic raw form to adding value. And this is where what you talked about comes in, trade infrastructure. How much of it do we have? AFCFTA exists, 97%, what do you call it, market openings are there for the taking. But who are those to take it? That's where I try to make the distinction between the existence of PoliticsToday, the governments in the political level are doing everything to address the basic provisions, the rules of origin, the common standardization and everything. All these are paper treaties and agreements that are daily being fine-tuned by who should be doing that, the ministers and the heads of state of Africa. The other part is for individual countries, and I'm saying this with Nigeria in mind, to actually begin to prepare and equip, build the capacity of its exporters to be able to meet the expected uniform standards when they come into play, to understand the basics of international trade and intertrading with another country, to know the difference between domestic consumption and international and global expectations. All these are activities and programs that need to be going on pari passu with the fine-tuning of the basic clauses of the AFCFTA.
Very interesting, Mr. Aberede, especially that concept which you have brought where, you know, at least a country within the continent can process a raw material to maybe a semi-processed one level of adding value and then can pass it on to another country. That's really interesting. But I mean, it does seem that there's so many hurdles that stop that. I think top on the list will be more of sentiment. It doesn't look like we have that consciousness and intentionality on the continent to actually link the countries together. Because traveling within the continent, sometimes you want to get a visa to another African country and it's a headache. And one would have thought that with all of these talks of intra-trade, intra-African trade, a lot of those barriers would have been dealt with. Well, we still have very strong and high walls between countries.
You can say that again and again, because that is the bitter reality we live in. Just try to take a truckload of goods from Mile 2 in Lagos to Banjul in Gambia. I think I mentioned it the last time I was on this program. It takes 91 days. 91 days. If you were driving a leisure drive from Mile 2 to Banjul, it probably takes you 3 days. 4 days if you want to enjoy the panorama. But from 4 days to 91 days. How does this impact the ability of Nigeria to trade with Canada? I'm not giving you a desk research. I'm giving you the result of a program that I was privileged to organize for SMIDAN and Nigeria Export Promotion Council back in 2023. We conceived the idea of actually positioning Nigeria SMEs and getting them ready for AFCFTA by first and foremost starting charity from within ECOWAS. So we chose Gambia as the #1 country to do it with. The idea was actually to do an annual thing in a different ECOWAS country every year. And then we found out that of the 40 exporters that we took to Banjul, all the orders that they received, they could not execute. Why? Because of the problem, the challenges of logistics, not only in terms of crossing the borders, but also in terms of the final cost, the borders, but also in terms of the final cost to the unit export product coming from Nigeria. So what does this tell us? This tells us, and when I say us, I say that very consciously, I'm talking about Nigeria. It tells us that for us to get it right, to be able to take advantage of the AFCFTA, we need to look at logistics. And I think Jumoke and her team are already doing something about that. It started with East Africa, with the Federal Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment already signing an agreement for air cargo facilitation between Nigeria and the East Africa countries with Air Uganda. I am thinking that we could also do that with the Nigerian, especially Nigerian carriers, Air Peace, and I think Value Jet. I think one more is coming up now that wants to be doing West Coast. Can we have that kind of transport logistics in place? Can we come to ECOWAS, the Commission, and negotiate a kind of, how do I put it, international or ECOWAS standard vehicle registration, commercial vehicle registration that allows trucks that are designated for AFCFTA to scale through the barriers, such that a truck that leaves mile 2 does not have to spend more than 20 days to get to Banjul, such that by the time the product gets to Banjul, it has not already eaten 4 months into a 12-month shelf life. So that by the time it gets there, taking advantage of the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, which is still in existence and operational, such that the treaties that have been signed between these countries actually are implemented, they are actualized, and the exporters begin to enjoy the terms, the words of these treaties. It says free movement of goods within ECOWAS countries. That's ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. Is zero duty free movement. If there was free movement, 91 days will come to 21 days.
So what's stopping us? I mean, you are inside all of this, from the regulator to the private sector you interact with, you know, these parties. Well, so what's stopping us really? We have the law, we say it, we want it. What's stopping the implementation? All right, well, let me just say that the value of the intra-African trade has hit, that's for 2024, the value hit $220.3 billion. It rose by an estimated 12.4% in 2024 compared to what we had in 2023. Then the share of total African trade in 2024 was between 16.6% and 17.5%, a slight increase from what it was in 2023, which was at 15%, but still low compared to other blocs. Like when you look at the trade going on within the EU, the European Union, which is about 70% of trade is what they do, you know, just within that bloc. And also, even in the southern part of the world, top trading in Africa still remains South Africa. They maintain the lead with approximately 42.1 billion in intra-African trade. So Nigeria is just waking up, and we hope that they will continue increasing the awakeness. Nigeria's intra-African trade approximately at 18.4. That's what it was in 2023, before we are now celebrating what we have in the first half of 2024. 2023, it was $8.1 billion. 2024, it was $18.4 billion. And now we have it at a higher level. And I think some of those products in trade include cotton, textile, apparel. Let's hear something other than oil. I guess that's what we've been hearing. Good news. I think we have Mr. Boyede back. Are you back, sir? Can you hear me?
here.
Okay.
I wasn't hearing.
Oh, okay. Apologies
No.
for that, some of those technicalities. So I was asking, why does it seem we know the solution, but we can't implement it? What's going on?
Yeah, well, there's something called a political will, and that differentiates between lip service and actualization. So just like I was going to advise that AFCFTA is actually not an event. It's not an event that should be publicized, promoted, celebrated. It is a process. It is a process that demands preparedness, that demands commitment. So for 25 years, we had AGOA. We facilitated sensitization seminars on AGOA. Nigeria probably was the African country with the least benefit from AGOA. What does that say? It is preparation. And when they say, some people say, I can't remember what that is it that breakthrough, miracle, or luck is actually when preparation, FTA, the governments in the political level are doing everything to address the basic provisions, the rules of origin, the common standardization and everything. All these are paper treaties and agreements that are daily being fine-tuned by who should be doing that, the ministers and the heads of state of Africa. The other part is for individual countries, and I'm saying this with Nigeria in mind, to actually begin to prepare and equip, build the capacity of its exporters to be able to meet the expected uniform standards when they come into play, to understand the basics of international trade and intertrading with another country, to know the difference between domestic consumption and international and global expectations. All these are activities and programs that need to be going on pari passu with the fine-tuning of the basic clauses of the AFCFTA.
Very interesting, Mr. Aberede, especially that concept which you have brought where, you know, at least a country within the continent can process a raw material to maybe a semi-processed one level of adding value and then can pass it on to another country. That's really interesting. But I mean, it does seem that there's so many hurdles that stop that. I think top on the list will be more of sentiment. It doesn't look like we have that consciousness and intentionality on the continent to actually link the countries together. Because traveling within the continent, sometimes you want to get a visa to another African country, and it's a headache. And one would have thought that with all of these talks of intra-trade, intra-African trade, a lot of those barriers would have been dealt with. Well, we still have very strong and high walls between countries.
You can say that again and again, because that is the bitter reality we live in. Just try to take a truckload of goods from Mile 2 in Lagos to Banjul in Gambia. I think I mentioned it the last time I was on this program. It takes 91 days. 91 days. If you were driving a leisure drive from Mile 2 to Banjul, it probably takes you 3 days. 4 days if you want to enjoy the panorama. But from 4 days to 91 days. How does this impact the ability of Nigeria to trade with Canada? I'm not giving you a desk research. I'm giving you the result of a program that I was privileged to organize for SMIDAN and Nigeria Export Promotion Council back in 2023. We conceived the idea of actually positioning Nigeria SMEs and getting them ready for AFCFTA by first and foremost starting charity from within ECOWAS. So we chose Gambia as the #1 country to do it with. The idea was actually to do an annual thing in a different ECOWAS country every year. And then we found out that of the 40 exporters that we took to Banjul, all the orders that they received, they could not execute. Why? Because of the problem, the challenges of logistics, not only in terms of crossing the borders, but also in terms of the final cost, the borders, but also in terms of the final cost to the unit export product coming from Nigeria. So what does this tell us? This tells us, and when I say us, I say that very consciously, I'm talking about Nigeria. It tells us that for us to get it right, to be able to take advantage of the AFCFTA, we need to look at logistics. And I think Jumoke and her team are already doing something about that. It started with East Africa, with the Federal Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment already signing an agreement for air cargo facilitation between Nigeria and the East Africa countries with Air Uganda. I am thinking that we could also do that with the Nigerian, especially Nigerian carriers, Air Peace, and I think Value Jet. I think one more is coming up now that wants to be doing West Coast. Can we have that kind of transport logistics in place? Can we come to ECOWAS, the Commission, and negotiate a kind of, how do I put it, international or ECOWAS standard vehicle registration, commercial vehicle registration that allows trucks that are designated for AFCFTA to scale through the barriers, such that a truck that leaves mile 2 does not have to spend more than 20 days to get to Banjul, such that by the time the product gets to Banjul, it has not already eaten 4 months into a 12-month shelf life. So that by the time it gets there, taking advantage of the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, which is still in existence and operational, such that the treaties that have been signed between these countries actually are implemented, they are actualized, and the exporters begin to enjoy the terms, the words of these treaties. It says free movement of goods within ECOWAS countries. That's ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. Is zero duty free movement. If there was free movement, 91 days will come to 21 days.
So what's stopping us? I mean, you are inside all of this, from the regulator to the private sector you interact with, you know, these parties. Well, so what's stopping us really? We have the law, we say it, we want it. What's stopping the implementation? All right, well, let me just say that the value of the intra-African trade has hit, that's for 2024, the value hit $220.3 billion. It rose by an estimated 12.4% in 2024 compared to what we had in 2023. Then the share of total African trade in 2024 was between 16.6% and 17.5%, a slight increase from what it was in 2023, which was at 15%, but still low compared to other blocs. Like when you look at the trade going on within the EU, the European Union, which is about 70% of trade is what they do, you know, just within that bloc. And also, even in the southern part of the world, top trading in Africa still remains South Africa. They maintain the lead with approximately 42.1 billion in intra-African trade. So Nigeria is just waking up, and we hope that they will continue increasing the awakeness. Nigeria's intra-African trade approximately at 18.4. That's what it was in 2023, before we are now celebrating what we have in the first half of 2024. 2023, it was $8.1 billion. 2024, it was $18.4 billion. And now we have it at a higher level. And I think some of those products in trade include cotton, textile, apparel. Let's hear something other than oil. I guess that's what we've been hearing. Good news. Yes, I think we have Mr. Boyede back. Are you back, sir? Can you hear me?
here.
Okay.
I wasn't hearing.
Oh, okay. Apologies
No.
for that, some of those technicalities. So I was asking, why does it seem we know the solution, but we can't implement it? What's going on?
Yeah, well, there's something called a political will, and that differentiates between lip service and actualization. So just like I was going to advise that AFCFTA is actually not an event. It's not an event that should be publicized, promoted, celebrated. It is a process. It is a process that demands preparedness, that demands commitment. So for 25 years, we had AGOA. We facilitated sensitization seminars on AGOA. Nigeria probably was the African country with the least benefit opportunity. So when the opportunity is there, like the AFCFTA is there right now, what about actually preparing the commercial foot soldiers, knowing that the international trade arena is actually a commercial battlefield, and every country must equip its soldiers, that is, its exporters, with all that is necessary. It's not just about sensitization, it's also about entrenching, enhancing, deepening the export support instruments. For example, the Export Expansion Grant in Nigeria, the Export Development Fund that has never really been funded, looking at all of those things and making sure that Nigerian exporters are actually prepared to take advantage of the opportunity that AFCFTA is opening up for them.
All right, we certainly hope to see the political will in the nearest future. Thank you so much for your time on the program. President of Nigeria Trade and Investment Center Canada Incorporated, Chief Femi Boyede.
Thank you so much.
All right, now let's take a break. When we come back, we'll look inward. So we're talking about intra-African trade, but then we'll also look into Nigeria. The policy of one local government, one product. We've heard about it for a bit. It seems the government is intensifying efforts to implement that, but we'll see from the perspective of a private sector how far they've gone and what they should be doing. Stay with us here. And I guess following on that information, let's say Happy International Men's Day today to all the men in the world, starting from here in our studios. Most of our crew members, you can imagine, are men. So Happy International Men's Day. You know, they always say that the women have how many celebrations in a year, and then men have only one, and we hardly celebrate them. So I celebrate you today. Happy International Men's Day today. But let's discuss business now, and we're discussing that one local government, one product policy by the federal government. It's a central philosophy that's supposed to drive economic growth and job creation at the grassroots level by focusing resources on developing a unique product, service, or industry in each of Nigeria's 774 local government area. The selection process is supposed to be from bottom-up, community-driven, and based on competitive advantage, comparative advantage. The product must be natural, based from the location that's being considered. Value addition potential should be around there. There should be also the potential for market demand also, and then stakeholders consultation. That's the local authorities, community leaders, entrepreneurs, experts. They should collaborate to select one product from each local government area and then make it work. So it's not new. It's not new. But it does seem like at the just concluded SME conference for 2020, for 2025, the three-day event, this has come up again, and SMEDAN is supposed to take the lead in implementing this. But I must say that even before now, before hearing it from the government, I've been talking to Mr. Chukwunwa Chukwu, the president of Agricultural and Industrial Entrepreneurs of Nigeria. He's been a guest on Business Morning a couple of times, and we've discussed this as his own project then. So let's find out what's going on from his perspective, and now that the government seems to be waking up to take up this see where they meet. Good morning, Mr. Nwachukwu, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ini. Good to be here again.
Yeah, good to see you. So we've been talking about this one product, one local government. I believe it's about 2 years now since I've been having this conversation with you. First of all, what's the progress from your own front?
Very interesting. It is a very viable project, and I'm glad you mentioned that we started talking about it, you and I, on this same program. We call it One Local Government, One Industry, Alloy. The progress thus far is that we needed to have the input, the buy-in of the entrepreneurs in the local governments who would actually warehouse the funding for these industries. And so we moved and signed an MOU with NOLGE, National Union of Local Government Employees. And the concept is actually to attract development finance funding to these people whom we're going to call agropreneurs. And that is ongoing. We've concluded that. Now, we also concluded with a very interesting, very aggressive development finance institution, DBN, who understand the concept of development financing as a tool to energize the economy. So the issue is the convincing the the deposit money banks in Nigeria. They are not interested in energizing the economy through agriculture or SMEs. It would talk from here to the kingdom come, and they don't conceptualize long-term employment creation strategies. We're not going to get there. We've engaged with a couple of banks. They're more interested in short-term lending. And so I think that we're going to engage with government. That's where government comes in, to channel their policy towards injecting funds into long-term investments in agriculture. But as for government themselves trying to do it, it is not possible. You and I have talked about it. It's not going to work. It started with something they call NEDEP. It hasn't worked. The thing is, government creates policies. They're not able to implement them. The government should stick to policy and not implementation. Implementation, the private sector-driven sector, must be led by the private sector. So we are very focused. We're arriving there. It's taking some time. We are also trying to create sensitization for all the local governments in Nigeria. So we signed up a pact. We're partnering with the Revenue Mobilization Fiscal Allocation Committee, who are prepared to fund a national seminar. I hope your channels will be there, so we can sensitize these people. It's an ecosystem that we're trying to come up with. We'll come up with that right now. So we're looking for buy-in to that.
All right, Mr. Nwachukwu, so, I mean, it's obvious from your efforts, you also do need assistance. Like you said, you've been talking to the banks, and they're not coming forth as you expected. You obviously need the government. So now that Sweden seems to be taking it more seriously, don't you think that perhaps a partnership between maybe your organization or any other party from the private sector working with government and regulators, don't you think that will accelerate this policy? Because it's obviously a beautiful one that will be beneficial to the country.
Government cannot regulate what these deposit money banks do. If they create a policy, then they need to sell it to them. The issue is not with government as such. The issue is with deposit money banks, what they call commercial banks in Nigeria.
Yeah, no, but Mr. Nwachukwu, sorry, Mr. Nwachukwu, sorry, Mr. Nwachukwu. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir? Yes, I can hear you. So I'm trying to say, it's not about the government regulating the banks, but if the challenge here is funding, the government can obviously do something, provide subsidized funds or rates. The government can walk through the Bank of Industry and, not necessarily working through the commercial banks, But I mean, if the challenge is funding, if there's a partnership, perhaps the government can come in and, push up from that aspect.
We're wrong about that. So government funding is budgeted, and if you're going to, let's say, engage in farming, when you need to apply fertilizer, you can't wait for the budget. We need to put the funding in place. And a very dynamic bank that understands it, the Development Bank of Nigeria, they understand it. Bank of Industry is not tuned into this thing, and they don't appreciate their role. The Development Bank of Nigeria appreciates it. Now, what government has also done is to put together a de-risking mechanism called the National Credit Guarantee Company of Nigeria, headed by a very prolific, entrepreneur-driven person as the MD. What government can do, they've done. Development Bank of Nigeria will partner with us. We have reached agreement in principle with them. We'll reach agreement with National Credit Guarantee Company Limited. I've sat with the MD, a very, very experienced gentleman who came from DBN. We've agreed with them. We've aggregated our story, agreed with NAIC. That's national. So the ecosystem that we have developed, it's set to go. But the development banking industry, is a wholesale bank. So they need to warehouse, they cannot distribute funds to individual entrepreneurs. So it requires the deposit money bank, the commercial banks, who incidentally are paying lip service. I've said this many times. They're paying lip service to SME. They're not interested. They're only interested in short-term lending. You talk to them, they say their portfolio is exhausted, blah, 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 blah. But the SME sector and agricultural sector is the single largest driver of employment and wealth creation in any economy. So SMIDAN, or Raw Materials Research and Development, SMIDAN particularly, will come in if they're interested and know their focus. They can come in on training of these people as entrepreneurs. For 20, 30 years, SMIDAN has been chewing out people whom they've trained as entrepreneurs, giving them certificates. They come in there with big, big seminars, but it cannot translate to real sector. The real sector is the private sector. So we're open to partnering with SMIDAN. Before the former Director General left, we had initiated a meeting, AIN, SMIDAN, and RMRDC. So we're moving forward. We're not going to bring in the government agency like NASENI, because we're going to create clusters in every local government in Nigeria. So when these people come in, common services. So let the government come in and partner with the private sector, an association whose product is entrepreneurship development, creating SMEs in each local government. We're getting there. It's a slow process, but we're getting there. Hopefully, first quarter of next year, we're going to have this national seminar where everybody will be there, and then we'll sell this product to them. We're also looking externally for funding, so we're there.
All right, we certainly wish you the best, Mr. Chukwunwachukwu, and hope that by first quarter of next year, as you said, we will have a milestone to celebrate. President of Agricultural and Industrial Entrepreneurs of Nigeria, pushing that one local government, one product initiative from the private sector, and we hope to hear a collaboration between your initiative and SMIDAN, to ease some of those hitches that you've been facing. But thank you so much for your time on the program. We'll certainly wish you the best.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, they say data is the new gold in the world, not just in Nigeria, not just in Africa, but protecting your data is very crucial, and balancing that with the usage is what data protection is all about, and the summit had that as a focus at the meeting yesterday. The Association of Licensed Data Protection Compliance Organizations of Nigeria an association of organizations licensed by the Nigeria Data Protection Commission to provide data protection services in the country, is working with the parent body, Nigeria Data Protection Commission, the NDPC, on the theme Threatening Digital Trust, Advancing Nigeria's Data Protection Landscape through Collaboration, Innovation and Compliance Excellence. And that's for the 2025 summit.
Over the years, DPCOs have been instrumental to assisting businesses to carry out things like the annual compliance audit, which comes up between January and March every year, providing the enabling trainings, carrying out data protection impact assessment, and certification training, which recently has vetted under the Institute of Information Management.
Most countries in Africa have been coming to see how it's being managed and organized. And because of that, in order to continue to create awareness, make sure that there is compliance, and also organizations have the necessary infrastructure on ground. Also, at the marketplace and higher institution, data and knowledge information privacy information initiative has decided, and we partner with Nigeria Data Protection Commission. We have a partnership agreement, global one, not just in Nigeria, and that has taken us outside this country.
For NDPC, data protection is rooted in human freedom with a balance to privacy.
If I give you my name and you are using it for one, if I give you my name for one purpose or the other, of course you are going to store it. Or okay, I give you my phone contact. You are going to store it. You are going to store my name. So you are processing my data in one way or the other. With this growth comes greater responsibility to secure personal data, ensure privacy, and maintain trust. So what is data privacy? It means empowering data subjects to make their own decision about who can process their data, for what purpose is the data going to be processed. I have the right to know the reason. If you request for my data, if you request for my name, my phone number, I have the right to ask you, why are you requesting for my data? What is the purpose for requesting for this data? It is a basic human right, and there are numerous legislations that guard this right.
The Nigeria Data Protection Commission has officially launched its Digital Privacy Awareness Campaign, a nationwide initiative aimed at educating the university community on the significance of data protection and privacy. That's it. Data is the new gold, but I mean, we're still learning, I guess, on how to harness it, protect ourselves. And I think one of the conversations that they had there was social media, AI, and me. Who really owns my data? Well, I'm sure if you follow them, that's the Data Protection Commission and the Data Protection Association, I believe a group of companies that have come together with the responsibility to protect our data. We would learn that. And the NDPC has already started a campaign. I'm sure it'll get to your doorstep if it hasn't already. But now, let's go global on Business Morning. So we'll go global now with Ladi Williams.
Thank you, Ine. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, in the global space now, we see UK inflation shows sign of easing in October. The annual consumer price index rose by 3.6%, down from 3.8% in September, the weakest pace since May. The monthly gain was 0.4%, with core inflation, that's excluding food, energy, at 3.4% annually. The softer data raises fresh hopes that the Bank of England may be poised to cut interest rates in December, a move markets have been waiting for the longest time now. All right, let's take it on to Asia now. China is escalating its economic pressure on Japan by announcing a suspension of imports of Japanese seafood, reversing a previous partial easing of restrictions. The move follows rising diplomatic tensions between the two nations, including public remarks from Japanese leadership concerning Taiwan Strait, and comes at a time when bilateral trade relations are already under strain For investors, the development signals greater geopolitical risk in the region, with potential ripple effects for Japan's export sector for supply chains reliant on Japanese seafood. And some company news now. Shares of Xiaomi Corporation plunged to a 7-month low after the Chinese electronics giant issued a price warning for its smartphones amid rising global memory chip costs. The Q3 revenue climbed around 2.3% to 113.1 billion yuan. The result missed analyst estimates. On the plus side, Xiaomi's net profits soared by 80.9% to 11.3 billion yuan, and its electric vehicle division reported its first profitable quarter. Now, we see Donald Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman have struck a deal in Riyadh. Riyadh is pledging to boost its U.S. investment commitments to nearly $1 trillion, according to the White House. Let's talk more now to Maria Bird, Channel TV correspondent in Washington. Hello, Maria. Great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what concrete projects or sectors are expected to absorb this nearly $1 trillion Saudi investment, and how realistic is the timeline for deploying that scale of capital?
Well, I think you bring up some great questions here. Typically, you see this type of investment, if there's going to be this type of investment, in purchasing of arms. So in previous years, in the previous administration of President Trump, there was also a investment that the Saudis said they would be making into the U.S. Economy. It didn't quite go to scale of what they initially thought that it would be. It was at that time close to $400 billion. And so the $1 trillion, as you mentioned, is it really possible to have that type of investment? It really depends on their buying power, one, and it also depends on exactly what they're looking to purchase. But typically, this could be more in the defense industry, really around arms and American goods. And so we shall see. I think it'll be something that we'll have to see how quickly they begin to purchase and at what scale they begin to purchase and what sector they're looking at. But we are looking to potentially see, the estimate is that they could be looking at potentially purchasing in the arms space. And if that's the case, then we probably will see a couple billion, maybe 50 to 100 billion up front. But to get to 1 trillion, there'll be quite a bit of purchasing that will happen in a pretty short period of time.
All right, so, given there's limited detail on the schedule, what are the possible risks or conditions that could derail or delay this commitment?
Well, obviously it's going to first depend on how quickly the Saudis kind of request those goods, begin to figure out exactly what they're looking to purchase. So that's going to be the number one piece there. And once we identify the types of goods that are being purchased, I think that will depend on manufacturing and production time. And depending on the types of arms, if they do stick in the area of kind of the defense sector, depending on the types of arms will depend on the amount of time for production. Typically, certain types of rifles, ammunition, things like that are readily available. But if looking for other types of more intellect related around kind of what the defense industry has to take some time and build, and potentially that could require additional technological or engineering processes and equipment that takes, that will require corporate America to also obviously be involved in this through the development process. So it's really going to be clearly indicated by what they decide to purchase.
All right, let's pivot to the government shutdown in the U.S. That's over now. What economic damage did the shutdown inflict? Looking at lost GDP, operations delayed, confidence, and what recovery efforts are needed at this time?
So as you mentioned, we don't know the full impact. Obviously, we're estimating that the impact is somewhere between 7 to 14 billion, which is quite a bit of a span there. But due to this being the longest shutdown in American history, the types of impacts that it had on furloughed and also employees that had been laid off, and part of the bill that was put in place was having those individuals paid once they came back to work, and to actually bring some people back to work that were actually let go previously. The other challenge that we obviously experienced was what was considered the SNAP benefits. I'm sure people heard about SNAP benefits were lost. Individuals that were getting subsidized food security dollars from the government, that was reduced and that was cut off for a period of time, so having to recoup those dollars. And so now that we're in a position where individuals are being repaid for the time that they were not working, that is going to have a tremendous impact. Obviously, individuals were not able to pay bills and different things. That's one of the things that was an outpouring and an outcome of this federal government shutdown was the identification of how many people actually were not financially secured, even with a job or with those additional federal government dollars to support them with food. And so the governments and many local governments had to put forth in place, whether it was food banks or different measures to ensure people were able to continue just having some basic necessities. So the cost has been great. And then, as you mentioned, the confidence, I think that Americans were reeling for those over 42 days and now are trying to just get back on their feet.
All right, thank you so much, Maria. We'll keep tracking progress there. Hopefully, you all out of the woods when it comes to the shutdown. Thank you so much. And meanwhile, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they've announced that the Producer Price Index for September, that will be released November 25th. The import and export price indexes for September will be issued on December 3rd, according to the Bureau. These economic data releases were delayed due to the federal government shutdown. All right, that's it on the global business space now. Back to Ini.
All right, Ladi, thank you so much. As we close now, we'll leave you in the hands of the bear at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The market is down this morning, 0.16%. 144,750.53 is the all-share index. Ladi Williams will give you the updates at 1:30 during Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Have a great day.